And then when I was about 7, I think, I'm not sure whether I was already at school. My godmother, who had 2 sons, no daughters, she asked my mother, "Can you give me your youngest daughter?"
Mm.
So my mother, she had been such a wonderful friend. She was a friend from beginning to end. My mother could not say no. Also, 6 children is a heavy burden. So she thought, okay. And so she gave me to my godmother. But I screwed up their plans because hers was a Teochew household. And I missed my siblings. I missed my amate. I missed the kind of food that I was used to. You see, my mother was very careful. Back then, it was not unheard of for people to choke to death on bones, on whatever.
Mm.
So my mother was very careful with all the children. Fish had no bones, pork had no bones, beef had no bones. Everything was very safe. So I go to this Teochew household where they serve mostly seafood and fish, and the fish had bones, and the seafood had shells, and not only that, but I was allergic to prawns and crabs, and I didn't know how to eat it. So day by day, I would just eat rice and maybe an egg, and sometimes I just wouldn't eat at all, and I kind of started shrinking. And one of my godmother's friends who had come to visit from Hong Kong told her, "You know that child? She's so miserable. She can't eat. She look at her. She's so skinny now. That's a long time ago, and you better give her back to her mother before she starves to death." So that's how I got sent back to my mother, and I was so happy. My siblings never knew that I had been
Mm.
given away. My
Yeah.
mother just told them, "Oh, she's spending a few days, a few weeks." And the whole episode is like a blank to me because I was so unhappy that I tried to block it out from my mind. So as an adult, I've been kind of like learning how to, trying to figure out how long I was there.
Ah.
But
You must
yeah,
have been quite
so
young then, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I think that's why I think I hadn't gone to school,
Uh,
or maybe I was just on the brink of going to primary 1. So yeah. But
yeah.
anyway, that was what happened, and uh, I stayed, friendly with my godmother, but I never wanted to go and live there. Later on, when I was an adult, I'd ask my mother, "Why did you give me away?" When I could ask it without the tears coming out.
Yeah.
And my mother said, "Your godmother came from a wealthy family. She was educated. I was not very well educated. She was a lawyer. You would have had a very good life there, no problem with money. You would have gone to university. Possibly you would have gone to university overseas. You would have had a very good life, much better than I could have provided for you."
Mm.
So that sort of closed that gap. So I understood, but
Yeah. What did you say to that?
oh, you know, I didn't say very much. It's like, oh,
Mm.
but then when I knew she was dying, one day I asked a friend. I said, I want to talk to tell my mother something, but it's very emotional, and I want to tell it to her in Cantonese, but my Cantonese is lousy.
Mm.
So I wrote out what I wanted to tell my mother in English. This friend translated it into Chinese, wrote it out, and gave it to a friend who transliterated it into Cantonese and coached me to speak it in Cantonese. So it's a very long process. And I was thinking, And so one day when I was home with my mother and nobody else was around, I put that piece of paper on my lap,
Mm.
and I started talking to my mother. And she was at that time kind of declining, but still, okay. The brain was okay. And she sort of almost sat up with a start because she said, "What? This child is speaking to me in Cantonese? This one doesn't speak Cantonese that well. How does she?" But she did see the piece of paper. So I told her that I understood and I had come to terms with being given away. I told her how much it had affected me when I was a kid. And she said, "Oh, we always thought that because you were so young, you would, like many children, just forget about it in time,
mm,
so that then it wouldn't, hurt or anything." So I told her, I said, "No." I said, "I never forgot about it." And I said, "I don't know, I said, I cried myself to sleep every night, every night." And it's so I could see my mother was getting very emotional. But I said, "I now understand that you were doing it for my benefit. You were doing it because it must have been so hard because there were six children, and this, not if everybody was all grown up, no problem. But then you had this one who was still in school." So I told her, I said, "I understood," and I said, uh, I used something. It was not forgiveness. I said, "I understand you did it for my own good, and I appreciate it." I never used the word forgiveness
mm,
because that might have kind of given her the feeling that she had done something wrong.
mm,
And so in the end, the two of us both ended up crying. But I felt cleansed because I had managed to tell her what I really felt.
mm,
And after that, I told my siblings, my sisters, "This is what I've done. If you have any issues with your mother, I suggest you go and talk to her one on one and tell her and solve it, have a resolution." I don't think I don't think anybody other than my second sister did that. But um, so as a result of that, I was very much at peace and with her passing, although it was still very emotional. But I understood how she grew up. She didn't even want to tell me how many children there were in her own family. So I didn't know whether there were two wives or whether the family was split by something or anything. And I, all I knew was that she had come from a pretty large family and that one of her favorite siblings was a boy, had something, I think possibly he had high fever one day, and the his parents took him to a temple, and the temple medium made him, kind of bow down and stand up and bow down until he collapsed and then he died. So that was so traumatic that she didn't want to talk about the family. And after that, she told me, she says, don't talk about this with other people." And it was only much later on that we met. Uh, my third sister is the only one because she was working on a ship as a hairdresser, and she went over to Medan and met our grandmother. The rest of us have never met.
mm,
But I met another aunt. I met when I was there, and I met the youngest, my mom's youngest sibling, when she came to Singapore to spend some time with us.